therefore, it's not that you have to accept what Vedanta says blindly, but you need to give it a thought, right? So that means you need to examine what you have been thinking, and then you have to examine it against what Vedanta is saying, and you honestly have to see what makes more sense, right? Now, if you feel that Vedanta makes more sense, then you have to actually drop what you think is right, what you thought was right, and not only you need to drop cognitively, but you also need to drop what in terms of your behavior. Okay, so that means that imagine if I tell you that this body is nothing but cells, right, and this cells is not I, anybody would say, so the combination of cells also doesn't become I. If I say that, cognitively you may think that, yeah, I understand that, right? But when you go out there, if a lot of your self-image is what centered around your visual, exactly. If you think that, I in your self-image, right, that I'm fat, or because of that fatness that you superimpose on yourself, you also then feel inadequate. Then when you go out to a social occasion, you're constantly looking at somebody who you think has a perfect figure, and you're jealous. So that means that the whole thing, you may understand in Vedanta class that yes, this body is nothing but cells, but this whole process of thinking is not going to get automatically eliminated. So that means there is a kind of a parallel. One thing is what I understand, and the other thing is what my past beliefs, and based on those past beliefs, a certain orientations and subsequent problems that are connected to that. So to undo all of that takes time, and therefore when you go next time, you need to constantly remind yourself that this whole thing about this self-image is centered on my body, and because of that sometimes there are distortions. People have eating disorders and things like that. Now, just a few days ago, I read in Times of India that in France, so many young people were becoming anorexic, and they began to develop eating disorders because they have this image of these models who are like so thin, and people were just not having proper healthy relationship with food. So now the government has decided that in order for you to pass a test or whatever to be a model, you have to have some minimum weight. So you can't project a weight which is so slim and make it as a norm, because that creates amazing psychological effects.
Barbie has been given a makeover as well. So now
Oh, really?
Barbie is not allowed to be a thin, sexy Barbie. She has
There's
to
going to be 6 types. A fat one,
Diversity also.
racial
Racial diversity
as well
and
as
physical diversity.
So that means that one has to then go through that change, and that change takes time. So that's why that perseverance doesn't mean that you stick to this pursuit, but when you go outside the class, right, how much of what you have learned during this 1 hour you actually are able to bring it to your mind when you have to deal with situations, and then a kind of act differently. So this is why now the neuroscientists, they all talk about neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the beliefs that you have had up to now about yourself, about the world, about your position in the scheme of things, and all your living is based on those implicit assumptions, right? You don't even realize what are my implicit assumptions, but they govern all your behaviors. Okay? Now that means they create certain neuron pathways. They actually create physical pathways, electronic pathways. Now, if you want to change, whenever you expose yourself to any discipline called Vedanta, which makes you think about things differently, then what happens? You have to create new pathways, right? So there is a physical change in the brain based on relearning of relearning of things, and that takes a while. And once that happens, then what happens? This is what we call transformation. Transformation means that now what was the original way of thinking has actually reconfigured, and it has become a new way of thinking, and actually you can see it physically. And also then initially what is deliberate, you have to remind yourself of changing your patterns of behavior, then that becomes what spontaneous. Okay, so that is that is required by Atma Vinigraha. Now the next value that is Sthiryam. Okay, so exposing to Vedanta and reorienting yourself. Now the second place where I find which is a very people still keep asking me that there is this whole thing about this God as somebody who's sitting out there, that is so deeply ingrained in the minds of people, okay, and it's kind of controlling your life. Okay, so therefore, and that entity is what they think is all love, all compassion. And then when people see the world and they see so many problems in the world, and also when they see their own lives and they see helplessness in their lives, then they always have this question that how come this entity is doing this to me, right? This is what we call why me phenomena. Okay, so you always feel like a victim of situations, you always feel the little sense of persecution, so that is something that, then you may conclude, oh, so therefore there is no such entity which is what we call the God. Okay, so therefore people kind of are caught in that very paradigm. What Vedanta says is what, it's not only essential for you to give some kind of a thought to how did this whole vast universe come about and what could be the cause of the universe. So what Vedanta says is there cannot be an effect without a cause. Okay, you can't have an effect without a cause. So therefore the very fact that there is an effect which is Jagat, it must have a cause. Okay, because otherwise it becomes illogical. An effect without a cause is an illogical statement. Anything that you see, it has its cause. Okay. Now, if there is a cause, then what is the nature of that cause? Okay, that is a huge question. And therefore, Vedanta makes you re-look at what is the nature of the cause. Okay. So what they talk about is Sarvajnaha Sarva Shaktiman Ishvara. That is a huge thing that you must understand. So that means all these understandings have to stay with you when you are acting. Okay. So what is this Sarvajnaha Sarva Shaktiman Ishvara? So the very simple thing that there are billions of cells in this body. There is a fundamental intelligence which puts together those cells and makes it behave in a certain manner. Okay, so that means, and then also those cells within human range have what? Certain common parameters, right? And if within those parameters, what happens is there is uniqueness in each individual. Imagine the mind-boggling intelligence that is, required to make it all happen. Okay. Then you have animal body, and what? Again there are cells, but they are put together differently to have a different program altogether, different range. The different range of sense organs, different range of mind, different physical body. So therefore you have within that range again what? Uniqueness of each individual. Okay. And not only the human, so that means there is an underlying intelligence which puts together, okay, all these minutest particles or atoms which are the causes of cells, and then organizes it in different permutations and combinations to make the world like that. Okay, so that means aquatic, that includes everything, birds, aquatic creatures. It is amazing, just a few days ago in Juhu, one whale died. And we all went to see it. It was just right in front of JW Marriott. You know, it was so huge, and for human beings, even to lift it was a huge. They had to bring so many cranes and to bring this, and you know, they were trying to just bring it somewhere far, and they couldn't even do it. So they had to just bury it right in front of. So the cells get organized and make it into a totally different creature, and it is connected to the life of each creature is then also connected to other creatures through what series of laws. So that means there is an underlying intelligence which makes every form what it is, and not only every form what it is, it governs interaction between what different forms through series of common laws. So that means once you begin to understand the presence of this intelligence, what will your attempt be?
To work with it.
Exactly. You need to work with it. Okay? If you don't understand its presence, and if you don't align your life to how it works, okay, how will your life be? Chaotic. Okay, so therefore it is simple as the laws of gravity. Okay, if you say I don't care about laws of gravity, how will your life be? You will just not even have any understanding that okay, I have to stop, right? So, but if you begin to understand laws of gravity, what will you do? The first thing you will do is to not fall, but using those law of gravity, what will you do? You will send, you can do spaceship to space. That means you need to understand how the world is and how it operates, and you need to align with it. The minute you begin to do that, your life will simplify. If you don't understand it accurately and you just have your own concept of what the world is, and if it is not accurate, and if you create your whole orientation based on your own understanding, you create conflicts. Okay, so therefore this understanding of the presence of that intelligence has to then, and you need to evoke it in different ways. So when it comes to human relationships, how will you evoke the presence of this intelligence? You don't need to bring in laws of gravity. What will you bring in? Which laws?
Cause and effect.
Yeah, but cause and effect with reference to my relationship with you is governed by which law? The law of actually psychology. So that means, what does psychology say? Psychology says that some behaviors that we have are from the conscious mind, and some behaviors we have are from what? The unconscious mind. What does this unconscious mind, what does it mean?
It is to do with our past relationships, with our past interactions with other people. So therefore, some sort of things have been created in our mind that if I do this, the other person will react that way. So we're not actively thinking this, but it's kind of conditioned.
Causes within.
There are causes within the causes of which we actually don't know. Okay, a lot of the for example, hurt. No, everybody knows that I don't want to be hurt and others don't want to be hurt, but we all end up hurting others. Does it come from a conscious mind? Do you feel that I want to hurt this person? Most of us don't want to hurt, right? But we end up hurting. What does it mean? That it comes from some place in my unconscious, okay, where there is some inadequacy within myself which gets projected into some meanness. So that means now if I begin to understand the laws of psychology, what will I do?
I will try to address what has hurt me so that I can resolve that.
Excellent. right? So that means you are evoking this intelligence. Please understand, intelligence in form of Ishvara. But here what is appropriate is that particular law which is relevant to my interaction with somebody else. So I can't bypass that. Okay, I can't use because Ishvara is not some entity. Ishvara also manifests, the intelligence also manifests in form of the laws of psychology, which is governing our interaction. If I behave like this, this is what it is going to do to the other person. And if I don't want to hurt the person, I have no choice but to what? Look at certain inbuilt assumptions which I have within me, which actually are not addressed. So that means you will need to, if you need to put your life back into alignment, you will need to evoke the right aspect of Ishvara and what? Align yourself to that.
So the law of connectivity would also.
Exactly. Right? So that means that intelligence, Ishvara, is all pervading according to us, but all pervading, not only it makes your body what it is, it makes my body what it is, it makes the body of an animal and aquatic creatures or bird what it is, by organizing those cells in a very intelligent manner, but it also governs our interaction through series of laws. That intelligence is all pervading. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. So, yeah, Arnaz, you had a question?
I just want to place in perspective Maya now.
Okay, now that we will go off. So right
No,
now,
but at the afterwards.
afterwards I will.
Sit now with this visual.
Yeah, so that we will talk about later. But so what you need to do is that the only understanding of the presence of intelligence is not enough. You have to do what? Evoke the right aspect. So when you are when you are a doctor, right, and you are giving medicine, which aspect of intelligence are you evoking?
So you are asking to give you the right chemicals to be able to transform those cells or realign those cells in a way so that they are work for effectively.
Absolutely, right? So there are certain laws of physiology you are taking into account and you are intervening. So that means bringing Ishvara in your life. We previously, what did we think? That only when I'm doing some bhajan or I'm doing, I'm rituals or prayers, I'm connecting with Ishvara. With this Vedic vision, right, when you're doing your job as a doctor well, by understanding properly the laws of physiology and aligning to them, and if there is a non-alignment, you're bringing it back, you're in touch with what? Ishvara.
It doesn't only have to be through medicine. I mean, there are
Exactly. So that means
all the time.
all the time. Absolutely. In everything. So when I'm interacting with you, I'm aware of laws of psychology. Right? When I am, and laws of gravity, as I said. So anything that you do, if you align to that intelligence and manifestation of that intelligence, you're in touch with what? Ishvara. So that means the whole idea is that it's not the physical prayer, but life becomes prayerful. Life becomes prayerful because, you begin to understand accurately how the world is and then what? Align to it. Every time, any discipline of knowledge is all about that. Evoking the right aspect. So that means a physicist, right, when he's in his lab and he's looking into the nature of any object, the quantum physicist may very clearly understand the fact that everything is nothing but particles. Okay, so therefore he's aligning with, he's evoking which laws? laws of physics, and he's totally clear. He's not what he doesn't begin to think that this object, as we see, we think of it as an absolute reality. The physicist is much more in line with the reality, which is what he sees it as mostly space and what just few tiny little particles which are moving about. Okay, so the physicist is alive. Now he comes home and his wife, it's his wife's birthday. Can he present her a piece of wood, because he understands that the wood is nothing but particles and gold is also nothing but particles? Can he do that?
He can, but
He can, but what will his wife
it will be
do?
a good idea.
Absolutely, right? So that means that intelligence, please understand, living with awareness of Ishvara means what? Not our previous understanding of what Ishvara is. You need to now evoke another set of laws. What are those another set of laws?
Laws of gifting.
Right, absolutely,
But
right?
these are partly in a way because the wife hasn't also got that awareness and understanding that are required. I mean, in reality, they
So
are
what I'm
required.
saying is, no, but that means at that level, even though it is particles, right, at this level you have to see the differences. There is an essential difference. So because see, no, otherwise what happens, Arnaz, is you can say this body is nothing but atoms, and then you can't live with that. So that means, no, it's very, very important you have to engage. Because the minute if I tell you that this body is not I, then you can say, okay, now I can shoot this body, so what? It's nothing but atoms. So what I'm saying is the wiseness, because the intelligence organizes itself and manifests in form of these different laws, evoking the right laws at the right time for right purpose is what we call the alignment. And that's why it cannot
The
be.
wife is not yet so evolved.
But what Arnaz is saying is
Yes.
Argue that it's not the right law
Yeah,
for
where is
exist-
the-
to be in existence.
where is the need to give a gift?
Yeah, where is
Sorry?
the need to gift?
Because you
Because-
Where is the need for wood versus gold?
Because
No,
Vedanta tells you
see,
have
that
to
means
live your life.
no. See, that amount, when you are building a house, you can't use that logic. You can't say, whether gold or it is, you need to use cement. You need to use cement. You can't replace it, right?
Absolutely. But
So
you don't
that
need
means
to hang this picture versus whatever.
that also goes to laws of aesthetics. See, the thing is very important, because the minute you start negating everything, you get into a
No, I
huge
think
confusion.
It's about understanding the essence of intent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I
And
think.
what you should understand is that, okay, you like this picture, but somebody else likes something else. So
It's
that's
the
their
essence of
choice, and let them
Absolutely.
And
I
you're
think
engaging in
In
a
daily,
world
you have to
today.
engage.
absolutely,
And that's in a way a reality also.
absolutely.
And the
See,
intelligence has given you this human birth to engage.
The law of karma,
Absolutely.
you come here with that.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So that means,
that's
That
right,
is the
yeah.
key.
so
You
that
often
means,
wonder where's the need, but you're here for a purpose,
Purpose.
and you're supposed to engage.
Age.
and the, yeah.
It's the dharma, law.
See, the law of psychology also means what? That the person wants to be loved. Right? Nobody can say I'm indifferent to everybody. In fact, the biggest problem in modern society is what? The feeling of lack of love. Most of the people feel that what there is insufficient love. I don't feel enough loved. Okay? In every relationship, actually, what am I seeking? That love which I have missed out on. Okay? And actually, no human being can what?
see that he doesn't want.
Yeah. And the thing is that I look for love which actually will never be, the other person is never be going to be able to, because these are deep needs of past. And I'm trying to fulfill them through this person who's in front of me, and there is no way the person can meet all the needs that I have, which is according to my psyche. Okay, so then what happens if I don't understand that? What will happen? I will keep demanding that love, and the person will feel what? more kind of wanting to distance himself or herself from me. So that's why the very fundamental intelligence, it manifests in different names and forms and different laws, and you need to evoke the right aspect of it. Otherwise Vedanta will create such a huge confusion, because you will then try to do all this world is just nothing but mithya, right? It is something which is just ultimately nothing but this intelligence, and then you stop seeing all those differences and being lucid about what is it which is required at this given point in time, and evoking the right aspect. And that's exactly what Madhvi, when it comes to decision making, which aspect of that intelligence I need to evoke? Dharma. Law of dharma. When it comes to responding to situations, which aspect of that intelligence I need to evoke? The laws of cause and effect, which is what we call laws of dharma, karma, which are putting together different causes of the past and connecting it to the present cause. Okay, so that means once you begin to do that, when it comes to your own emotions, can you then say that, oh, all this is just nothing but just some neurons which are in my brain and just sticking together? You need to take care of your emotions. Okay, so that means if there is anger, there is sadness, there is fear, you need to deal with it, and you have to evoke right laws to deal with it appropriately. So that anything that you ignore, even emotional life, right? From the childhood, the only way we have dealt with our emotions is what?
Yeah.
Either we react or we suppress. Okay? There are only two ways, because we are told by our parents that good girls and boys don't cry, or they don't show fear, or they don't have anger. And so that's why I think I told you in this class that I do class with kids. I think I told you that, right? And then I asked them how their kids from this very good school, and when they have to present in front of the whole class, I asked them how do they feel, and they said they feel scared, they feel nervous, they feel one person said they get panic attacks, right? Now I said, have you ever told anyone before? And they said no. So I said, how come you feel this and you haven't told anyone that? So he said, yeah, because when we come home, the only thing everything is like, how did you do? Did you come first in the class? So that means from the very beginning, people are taught not to address or to be in touch with this feeling. And even as an adult, we tend to do that, right? When there is this feeling of sadness, what do? We distract us, right? Because we don't quite know how to handle it, so we distract ourselves. And that distraction, that's why most of our entertainment is what?
Loud and noisy.
Yeah, because somehow the thing is suppressed, like everything which is suppressed, exactly, let me forget. Because with that suppression, we are not totally at ease. So you find ways to just get out of that suppression, and that is something. So enjoying yourself is very good. It's very healthy. You have to be cheerful in life, right? But the society is what I want to show is the society that we have created is this just a kind of a very superficial way of getting over the suppression. But what is the real way of getting over the suppression? Is to talk about. There's a healthy way to just acknowledge it, and then you can celebrate life as much as you want. The entire life becomes celebration. Okay? So therefore, this is what we say, we evoke, just because everything is fundamentally intelligence, it doesn't, we overlook all this, and if we continue to overlook all this, there is no growth, and there is no alignment. So therefore, that whole alignment, which is what we call assimilation of this knowledge, that stairyam, you become steady in this knowledge. This knowledge is not used to what? Bypass issues. It is not, used to dissociate with the real problems, but it is used appropriately to live intelligently, with clarity. Okay? Because otherwise, as Bela says, all this, okay, now all that is intelligence, how does it change my life? Whether I know it or I don't know it, what difference does it make? It makes a huge difference, because the minute you understand how it organizes itself and you begin to align yourself, it makes all the difference. In which aspect of your life it will not come into play? Show me.
Every aspect.
Every aspect of your life. Okay, so and for that process to happen, where you can actually evoke the right aspect and align yourself, where life will become what? Much better, much easier, much simpler. Your clarity will increase, your loads will go down. Okay, so therefore this is what we call that stairyam. Stairyam is sthirasya bhava. Then you can say that this knowledge has what? Taken its deep roots into your being and bringing certain amount of equilibrium. This equilibrium does not mean, right, some artificial equilibrium by saying, oh, I have to be same in all situations. So there is, I want to say one thing, because it's very nice. This equilibrium that generally when spiritual people talk about, it has a connotation of what? Just be like,
Calms, like a lake.
it's like you're not responding to situations appropriately. This is an artificial equilibrium. We are not talking about that. Okay, that equilibrium comes by understanding how the world works and aligning with it. So we give an exercise, right? Surya does this in his college, because this whole idea of equilibrium, composure has to be understood properly. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to ask you a question, right? This is you have to work it out. There is this person, and he was doing business, and then one day he decided that I want to wind up this business and I just want to buy one horse, and with this horse I'll be able to, because business has too many variables and I don't quite know how to handle everything, so I'm just going to buy one horse as an investment and I'll try to make my living out of that. Okay, so therefore he did that. He sold his business and he bought this horse. He was living in a small village, so all the villagers, what did they say? This man is a fool. He's stupid. Exactly, right? He's exactly. So what is he going to do with this horse? And he sold all his business. So he's really mad. He doesn't know how to make any decisions or whatever. And this man said, whether it is wise or not wise, who knows, right? So then he is like, so this is what we call now I'm going to ask you a question, right? So he says, he just stays totally calm and he says, who knows, right? Now, one day that horse ran away. So then he was he was left with nothing. So what did the villagers say? That see, we told, and it was such a stupid thing to do, and look at him, and he has just absolutely no sense. How is he going to support his family and all that? And he says, whether it is good or bad, who knows, right? Now, after 1 week, the horse comes back with 5 other horses. And what do villagers say?
How are you going to support six
How
horses?
lucky. No, they said, oh, how lucky he is. Wow. I mean, look at this.
Must have had some clairvoyance.
Absolutely, that how this, from one, he now all of a sudden has 5 more. So he has 6. And now he's going to be rich, he's going to be well, and things like that. So they started really praising him, right? And all the criticism, which was what? All forgotten. And what did this man say? Whether it's good or bad, who knows? Right? Now, then one day, his son was riding on the horse, right? And he fell down. Bela knows. You know the story? She's anticipating, right? So now he fell down. Then what did all these villagers say? See what
thing you did now.
what a stupid thing you did, right? That now look at your son, and your son is now, look at his future, it is all doomed. Who's ever going to marry him? And he's not going to be able to do anything, and he's left with this injury and all. And this man, what does he say? Whether it's good or bad, who knows, right? So exactly, absolutely wonderful. I'm so happy because the samatvam that people say Gita talks about is what Sumi says is what? Autism. Is now, but I want to.
I didn't finish the story.
Autism.
This man is autistic. He's
Has no
autistic.
emotions. He has no emotions.
Now one.
His emotional affect is
low.
because at no point is he reacting to good fortune or misfortune.
So this is wonderful, Sumi. I'm so happy you said that, because this is elevated to something which is highly spiritual, where you lose your lucidity to what? Respond normally to situations. This is not equanimity that Bhagavad Gita is talking about. Because this whole story goes on, and then every time he just says what? Whether it is good or bad, who knows, right? So so therefore, now does anybody think that there is merit to this kind of a response?
No.
So Surya made everyone do a debate in his. So there were some people who had this response, which what Sumi is saying. This is what a way to live life. You lose your lucidity to what? See what there is a corresponding emotion, and there is a corresponding kind of a thing, and he's aborting it, and that is not wisdom. And we agree with that, right? For some others, they went for it. Why would you think?
Philosophical.
This is what we call.
Deep in,
And you can
He was
escape.
accepting his misfortune or fortune as a spiritual being.
It's like that poem, which says that I will treat both impostors the same, good fortune and bad fortune.
Absolutely, right? So there may be some, let's refine it slightly, right? So that means
This is going to be recorded. We will
The
hear
law
it.
of keeping in the law with making appointments on time.
This is on record. We'll see it again in the evening.
Thanks so much.
okay. Nice to have you. Bye. So therefore, one has to be very, very careful.
There is some merit to not
There is
speaking out of.
absolutely. So that means there is something that I want you to understand, because every spirituality, when you don't analyze things accurately, what happens is when the teacher doesn't make it very clear, then these are the notions that people have, right? So you lose as though everything is the same. So you become what? Less clear about things than before, and you hide it under the garb of spirituality, that I am very equanimous and I have composure and things like that. Okay, so now what is wisdom? You have to redefine. This is not the composure that we are talking about. What is then the real composure that we are talking about?
Appropriately respond to each
Absolutely.
situation.
Absolutely. Right? Because that situation is a unique situation, and if I can understand all the nuances of that situation and do it appropriately and do what needs to be done, that is wisdom. Right? So that means when the child falls, you can't say whether it's good or bad, who knows what. There is a corresponding emotion, which is what? That you will feel worried. There is nothing wrong in it. Please understand, the minute you start labeling all the emotions as negative, you have deprived yourself of all the different range of emotions that we are supposed to feel, and they are indicators. They give us an indication of what is an appropriate response. Like the physical pain is not negative. What does it do? It shows me that I need to take care of it. Right? Exactly. What is the corresponding pathology, and you figure it out and you try to intervene. Okay? So that means every emotion has its own place. When does that emotion become dysfunctional?
When you give too much or too little importance.
Absolutely. Both are which are not in keeping with reality. Either you get totally carried away with that emotion and you lose all other perspective, or you don't give it due importance, right, and try to negate it. So, and therefore this composure comes from what? The total understanding of what the world is, and then what? Using your free will to do whatever needs to be done and respond to it intelligently.
The term you use, align,
Align.
is exactly that.
Absolutely.
So it's the appropriate
Response to the situation, and different situations require you evoking different aspect of that intelligence, because that intelligence is all pervading, right? But that doesn't then mean that you have to evoke the same aspect of that intelligence.
And that's again
That's where the wisdom lies.
That's where the wisdom lies. Yeah.
How it affects
Yes.
your behavior. So that's actually a very practical thing, because so often we take one behavior into a situation where the same behavior doesn't work.
Absolutely.
It's,
Right? So that means absolutely. So there's sometimes even to compassion there is a boundary. Right? So if I make it a rule, I want to be compassionate, and then when somebody starts abusing me, and in the name of compassion I let the person abuse me, then what?
That is also
That is also wrong. So that means we.
like Gandhiji says,
Yeah.
tolerating intolerances also.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's the 4 E's, right? Accept, acknowledge, accommodate, and align.
Yeah,
Sums up the whole of your.
yeah.
But also to
But-
understand.
Where you accept, then you acknowledge it, then you accommodate, and then you align yourself.
yeah.
Kind of.
No, but it's also
It
to
is-
understand.
It is to understand.
When you acknowledge
Yeah.
it, you kind of
See,
understand.
and what is Vedanta doing fundament? Because all these behaviors you can acquire without understanding of that underlying intelligence. So all that is here is Ishvara. That is something which changes your whole perception of the universe. We are within one whole system. It's not like you are working with the world which is external to you and you are trying to be nice and you are trying to be responsible. What is the reality? The whole world is what? One whole system, where, and it's all, every aspect of that is manifestation of that intelligence. So that is that fundamental vision of oneness. And that is the reality. That is a fundamental reality which is one, which is manifesting in different names and forms. Even that understanding you must bring at the right time. Okay, so therefore there are differences. Where there are differences, you have to see the differences. Where there are different laws, you have to see different laws. Where there is underlying oneness, you have to see underlying oneness. So wisdom is what? Not mixing up things. Or not seeing it partially. Seeing it, having the right perspective, which is totally in keeping with what is. And that is Thairya. Thairya means that when you persevere and you listen to Vedanta again and again and again, and you fine tune your understanding again and again and again, what will happen?
You will gets more and more in alignment.
You're aligned.
Absolutely. There is a shift which is such a fundamental shift from where you can never go back. It's not like
Sometimes there is an aha moment which suddenly just puts all this
puts
machinery in
absolutely.
motion and, all the gears kind of get into place.
Right? So that means this is what we say stharyam. Stharyam is in your effort to listen to Vedanta, and stharyam also then refers to your whole being becomes what? Aligned. Okay, so there are no there are no disconnects and dissociation. Okay, so that is Thairyam and Atma Vinigraha. This is the last value, which is a very beautiful value because again there is this whole cliche about the spirituality, with spiritual world, where I think what Sakar was saying, that she asked her husband about, did I meet the image of a Vedanta teacher? Right, and he, because that
Now
image,
ask him
yeah, which
what
was
he
thought about, yes,
How he visualized you before
Yeah.
he met you. Dancing on the floor. And
Drinking wine and whiskey.
Yeah.
Sure, he was surprised.
so therefore there is this whole beautiful image, right? The general understanding is spiritual means what? That you stay away from the world, you kind of refrain yourself from all kinds of exactly, right? These are all the cliches. This is a kind of an image of a spiritual person that we have. In Bhagavad Gita, there is a very beautiful, one of the verses has a beautiful description of a wise person. It says, Yada samharate chayam kurmunganiva sarvashaha indriyani indriyarthebhyaha tasya prajna pratishtita. Okay, tasya prajna pratishtita. Whose prajna, mind, is pratishtita, well, deeply rooted in spirituality. Who is this person? The example is that of a turtle. Okay, so the turtle, what does he do? There is a time that he comes out, and there is a time that he withdraws. Comes out and he withdraws. Comes out and he withdraws. Now imagine if our life is like that. Okay, when you have to engage in the world, you engage fully. You do what you have to do with all your passion, with all your love, with all your enthusiasm, all your dynamism and everything. Okay, what is the problem? If you're unable to withdraw and center yourself, what happens? Over engaging becomes what? You're unable to withdraw and spend some time for yourself and reflect. What will happen? That very engaging will become meaningless. So engaging with the world fully is not a problem. Okay, but if you don't find that little center from where you can have some kind of a reflection, some kind of inner nourishing, some kind of that silence where the creativity emerges, then there is a problem. Okay, now imagine you're constantly in a shell, you're totally withdrawn. Is this good? Equally unhealthy. Why? Because the world is created in a way that what relating is something that you cannot avoid. Nobody can avoid relationships. Even if you leave everything, right, and you feel that you go to Himalayas, can you avoid relationships? You have relationships with what? First of all, the person who built that little hut. Then every day you need your food. Every day you need, and if you don't talk to anyone, what will happen?
You start talking to the animals.
Exactly. Because there is an innate, absolutely, right? So total withdrawal is what? Not necessary. Total engaging without having certain amount of what? Self, spending time with yourself is also not healthy. Both lead to problems. Okay, so that means that capacity, any engagement will become what? Over engagement. That over engagement will lead to what? Something which is very good, it will become what? Eating is very necessary, it's very important. Okay, now if you overeat, it's a problem and you lose the perspective, and if you undereat is also problem. So that means you need to do it what? That when you need to eat, you need to eat, and you need to actually enjoy that eating, and not keep telling yourself that, oh, I'll get fat and I'll have calories and this and that, right? So that is that very important. In Vedas, before we eat, we do a prayer. What is a prayer? We say the food is part of that intelligence, right? The eater is also what? Part of that intelligence. That after eating, the digestive system can actually what? From that external food create energy which is required for this organism to survive, is also what? Part of that intelligence. When you remind yourself every day before eating, you have what? Healthy relationship with food. You don't abuse your body with food, and nor you deprive your body of this food. You have proper relationship with it. Okay, so that means this represents everything in this world. Either you only think about work and you get totally carried away with work and you just forget, to spend time with yourself, or you are so lazy you don't what? Accomplish enough. And you don't what? Do. And a lot of our dissatisfaction also comes when you have talents, you're endowed with all these skills, and you don't what? Use your free will enough to what? To actually use those skills. Underachievement is a lot of people settle for much less than what they can do. When they do that, there is an inherent dissatisfaction. Okay, so therefore engaging in the world and being able to also withdraw at the right time, that is what we call Atma Vinigraha. How do you begin to be this person who has what? Right engagement but not over engagement? Okay, so this is where we have certain practices. It's interesting how to translate this idea into action. Certain help, some aids are given. Okay, so this whole fasting tradition that we have is what? You eat, but there is this whole what thing to exactly.
So it's the withdrawal period.
So it is that little withdrawal period which is required. It is required both for physical cleansing, and it is also required to what? You want to engage, but you have to refrain. So that means it's a mental discipline.
You feel strong actually the day after you fast. You will, yes, I could do it.
Absolutely. So it has some physical benefits, and it also has what? Certain mental benefits. These are small practices which make you that person who's able to engage and also at the same time withdraw. Okay. There is a second practice which is what we call Vak Tapas. Vak Tapas means when you speak, not every time. You can have fun, and it's not like every time you have to be serious and stuff like that. This whole Vedanta is not about just creating more and more complexes and more. Just enjoy yourself, be light about it, but be aware. Okay, so that Vak Tapas is, you can say that today, or for half an hour, or for 1 hour, or whatever, right? Whenever you are really angry, I said, okay, I'm going to express what I think, but I'm going to do it non-violently. Okay, so that is Vak Tapas. I feel like saying something, but I'm careful in how I express it. Over a period of time, and it's not like you always have to be like this very this obsessed with being all right and proper and this and that, and lose that spontaneity. I'm not saying that, right? But that little alertness. sometimes I see some things which we have done very innocently, it has hurt somebody else so much, and the person is carrying it for so long, right? So just by being a little bit more aware, we can do what? We can avoid that unnecessary hurt. Okay, so that means these are all little practices that we can incorporate in our life to have this what? Atma Vinigraha. Engaging, withdrawing. Right time of engagement, right time of withdrawal. Okay, so that is Atma Vinigraha. So these are some of the values. There are totally 20 value 20 values that 13th chapter of the Gita talks about. Here there are 5 or 6 which I have done. What our teacher was saying is, it's not that you have to write all the values and do a tick mark and say, okay, now I have this one and I don't have that. Even that is good, because it gives you an indication. Some of us are stronger in one and we are not so strong in the other. So it is a good way to look at different values and see where I can align. But what he used to say is, you take only one value and you try to live by that. Everything else will align itself.
They're all linked.
Because they're all linked. They're all interconnected. If you take one value, and this is what these sannyasis, what do? They collapse all the values into one value. And that value is that of ahimsa. Ahimsa. Ahimsa is non-violence. If you really begin to live your life by ahimsa, value of ahimsa, you will see how much change there can be in your life.
And ahimsa in the
ahimsa is the
widest possible way. Absolutely. See, that will also enable you to align to dharma. It will enable you, because you say that, okay, now from my conscious mind I'm aligned to dharma, but my unconscious, when it governs, I end up hurting people. Then what? It will also force you to look into your unconscious. So that means it will make you a complete person and take out all the distortions that you may have in any aspect of your personality. Okay, so therefore, just that, and simple. You don't even need to now say from today onwards I'm going to, that awareness and just adjusting your behavior slightly, over a period of time, it will bring about transformation. Okay, so that is what this whole living the life of dharma and values it does to you. Okay, now for most of the people, being this person is an end in itself. But according to Vedanta, this is what? This is a means to an end. Okay, this is not the final the final purpose of life is not to. So therefore, there is an analogy which is given by in Kathopanishad. What is Kathopanishad? That there is a chariot owner who has come to who has to go somewhere, and in order to go somewhere, the chariot owner needs to use what? The chariot, and the chariot has 5 horses. So he has to also use those 5 horses. There are reins. Then he has to use the reins, and then there is a charioteer, the person who drives the chariot, and that also has to be intelligent, right? So aligned. So now, and who are you? You are the chariot owner. Okay, now imagine if you think I'm only the chariot. It is like you think when you come to this universe, I'm only the body, only the physical body, and the whole time goes in only beautifying the chariot. What what's, it is waste. But can you say because the chariot owner is independent of being a chariot, the chariot, he just doesn't even have to keep it well? He has to keep it well. He or she has to keep the chariot well. Okay, the horses. The horses, can you say that, the horses are equated to 5 sense organs? Can you say that, the chariot owner is independent of the 5 horses, but can you be indifferent to those horses? You require those horses. Okay, so that means the indriyas are, these 5 sense organs that you are given, they are the only access that you have. Through them, you have access to this whole world. Without these 5 sense organs, you have no access to the world. You need to take care of them. You need to engage. Right? Then you are this chariot, the charioteer, the one who runs the chariot. Are you that? The chariot owner is distinct from that, but can you then say, let the charioteer who's distinct from the chariot owner be whatever it is? No. You need that buddhi, he or she has to be skillful, needs to know how to go, where to go. So that is our relationship with this. So the body, the senses, the mind, the buddhi, they are all what? Means. They are means. And what is the final goal? You have to have those means, and those means have to be well utilized by you. But what is the final goal? And what is the final goal is said in the next verse. Okay, so the next verse says, where are my glasses? So Arjuna had asked this question, Jnanam and Gneyam. Jnanam is the means of knowledge and Gneyam is to be known. So up to now, Lord Krishna explained the means of knowledge, means you need all these values to know, and to know what? So that is, it says, Gneyam yattat pravakshami yadnatvam amrutam anadimat param brahma nasattanna saduchyate. With all these preparations, what is it that you finally have to know? And that he says that what is Gneyam, what is to be known, is what? Knowing which you will get Amrutatvam. Ashnute means you will get, Amrutatvam means immortality. And what is that? Anadimat Param Brahma. That Brahman, which is you, which is your real nature, the chariot owner, which constantly gets missed out by you, that you need to figure out its true nature. Okay, so that means there is a confusion where what we have lost lucidity, or the real distance between what the chariot owner and what the chariot, the horses, the charioteer, everything seems like one to us. Now here, what ultimately gives me freedom is, after having prepared all these different things, what gives me ultimate freedom is knowing myself to be free from all this. And who am I? I am that Brahman. Okay, that is what we call moksha. And that reality about you being Brahman is not something that is produced, it is something which is already there. Okay, it is already there, but it is missed. Like how Bela, I loved it when last time she said, it is so much present that it is what? Getting loaded with wrong things. Don't look for Brahman somewhere else. It's not, see, please don't think of Vedanta as being abstract. It's not abstract. Anything which is talking about your true nature, can it be abstract? There is only one thing which is always there with you, and that is what? Yourself. ideas can be abstract, but yourself can never be abstract. It seems like abstract to us when somebody first points out Vedanta. Why?
Because we can't understand it.
We can't understand because our whole life, and not only one life, but lifetimes are lived not knowing the distinction between the chariot owner and the chariot. So that's why when somebody even begins to say, yeah, all this is right, but there is you who is independent of all of this, it seems like what? Such an alien kind of a thing, because all my lifetimes are lived with this mistake.
But are we saying that the chariot owner is independent of all this and yet a part of it?
Excellent. So that means what Vedanta says is a very, very important question. What Vedanta says is that there is a whole vision of oneness. Oneness, what does it mean? That the charioteer, the owner of the chariot is independent of everything, but everything else is not independent of the owner. That whole relationship is that of Satyam and Mithya. Because it is a relationship of Satyam and Mithya, there is the vision of oneness. Oneness. Okay, so that means Chandogya Upanishad. It says, Vacha Rambhanam Vikaro Namadheyam Mrittika Ityeva Satyam. You have, Mrittika means clay. You have a clay world. Clay world has what? So many different forms, shapes. Something is big, something is small, one is a pot, the other one is a kind of a table. You can have so many different objects which are made up of clay. Now, these objects which are made up of clay are what? Vikaraha. Vikaraha means they are modification of clay. Other than clay, there is nothing else. Okay, now what is our immediately what is it when we see all these different objects made up of clay, how many different things we count? Yeah, as many objects there are, we think that there are that many realities. What does Upanishad point out? Mrittika Ityeva Satyam. Forms are different. There is no doubt about it. Right? But there is one underlying reality which is unchanging. And what is that? Clay. Right? Now, in order to understand that all that is here is clay, do you need to negate the forms? You don't need to negate. You don't need to negate. And do you need to see all these forms as same? No. Because they are different.
But you just have to have that awareness of the clay.
Because it's a fact.
It's a fact.
It's like that.
It's a fact which we miss out.
Like that prism.
Yeah. See, it is not like, oh, you want to feel one with the world. It's nothing to do with my feeling or anything. It is a fact which I miss out. And what is a relationship? The form cannot exist without clay. And clay is, while pervading every form, is independent of what?
Of all these forms.
Of all these forms.
That's a mithya satya.
That is Satya Mithya. Right? So, pervading the clay, it what transcends, the clay transcends its size.
Right.
Pervading pot, it transcends. This is what we call transcendent. You know, it's not like you have to physically remove yourself. Transcendence means that pervading it, it is free from it. So therefore, initially that chariot owner that we miss out happens to be the Satyam. So we start with what? Non-understanding of the Satyam, and Mithya is taken to be Satyam. So our whole vision of the world is so distorted, and within keeping that distorted vision, we want to fix it. And there is no fix. So if you really want to understand, you need to get this, because we miss a very essential reality. Gneyam Vastu. Gneyam Vastu happens to be I, and that I happens to be Satyam. And it is so evident that I don't even see it as something which is distinct. I only define it as what? The body, the mind, the senses. And that becomes my self-identity, and everything else seems to be what? Other than me. And with that understanding, what is my self-image? I am what? One dot in the universe. If this is what I think I am, and that dot is so helpless with reference to so many things. So many things are not within my control. But imagine the complication that I begin to want to control everything which is not in my control. First, I give myself a wrong identity. Within that non-understanding of the world, things which are not in my control, I want to control. And then what happens when things don't happen the way I want them to happen? Then I further load myself with what? Feeling of helplessness, low self-image, dissatisfaction.
And then to compensate for that, I do more and more things to control.
Absolutely.
And you become like a Hitler.
Absolutely. Suffering. Exactly. So that means if you want to free yourself from suffering, what choice do you have but to undo this mix-up? All these other things which are small techniques are just, you have to see the enormity of this vision as opposed to all small techniques that we learn. Techniques are useful, right? But you can't confuse that with Vedanta. The level at which Vedanta is talking about is just way too fundamental. It is undoing the most basic fundamental confusion of life, which then leads to series of confusions. Gneyam Brahma. Gneyam Brahma is an essential reality. Don't think that it is a reality which is what difference does it make to my life. It makes the difference. What do you think about yourself? If you are limitless and if you have somehow thought that I'm limited, you are starting at a very wrong starting point, and it brings all subsequent problems. And this is why I will end with a quote by Albert Einstein. By Albert Einstein. He said that this universe is one undivided whole. Okay? And within this undivided whole, we have created what? Artificial boundaries, and we give ourselves what location? Which is what? Only here. And he says the whole life we live being imprisoned by self-imposed limitation, boundaries. Albert Einstein, and we think what a mind. Our rishis thousands of years ago were saying the same thing. You can't ask a question that was so what? What difference does it make? It makes all the difference.
And
Albert Einstein was saying, I'm saying something great.
He sees the reality. What I'm saying is those realities are so fundamental, and if we don't incorporate them, right, our thinking becomes so skewed. That's what I'm saying. He's great, and he's saying what he sees. And he's just intelligent person who has a certain who breaks away from our habitual ways of looking at things, and is more in touch with what is. So therefore, this is something that Neyam Vastu is Anadimat Param Brahma. And the relationship is na tad sat, na asat. Neither it is mithya, this vastu, this awareness, because of which you come to know different conditions of your body and mind, which is Chit Swarupa. Neither you can say it is an object in the world, nor you can say that it is not there. It is there, but the only thing which is there and is not given to you as an object is what? Yourself. Is given to you as Swataha Siddhaha, self-evident I. Okay, and the ultimate mix-up is what? These are all the means. These values that I talked about are what? Means to prepare you to do what? Ultimate, what? Undo the ultimate mix-up. When that happens, there is a complete alignment to what is. Until then, the alignment is partial. There is no place where what you think is different from what is. What is what you think. You're aligned.
Sorry, what did you say?
What is what you understand, and what you think. You're aligned. So that means, so Surya used to say, I'll just end the class by that, and he says that imagine you're in Calcutta, right, and you have a map which is London map. How will you be able to navigate yourself in Calcutta with London map?
How will in the London map?
It will not be useful. It's the same thing. You are living in this world, but you have created your own map of what the world is, which doesn't correspond to the real world. How will you navigate your life? You have to undo that map, and you have to figure out this map, because this is the map. Okay? So that is this Neyam Vastu. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.